I'm with Mark Jones, a venerable GSL exhibitor. For years, I've been loving your Lotus Caterhams. Can you give us a quick tutorial on the difference between a Caterham and a Lola?
One's more like a toy and one's more like a death machine. The Lotuses, the Caterhams are an exercise in lightweight, low horsepower, making the most of what you have. This is an overabundance of horsepower. You strap yourself into a rocket.
It is a Lola, not a Lotus.
It is a Lola T70 instead of a Lotus 7. So I've got the 7 and I got the L and the O. The real cars were very competitive back in the 60s in racing. There are very few of them ever made it on the street. So there is a precedent to have them on the street. There are replicas being made that are street legal now. This represents a car that was a race car at one time, was probably put out to pasture and built to more modern standards. The engine that's in it is basically a copy of the engine that's in one of my real cars, except I don't run Webers, I have a Holley carburetor on mine. So everything from the manifold down, including the valve covers, is pretty much a copy.
So for reference, you could just go to the garage and check it out.
I typically build of what I know, which is what I own or what I've built. This was originally a Tamiya kit. I think it came out about 1970. It was reissued in the early 90s. It was a motorized model. The motor was hidden inside the motor.
The motorized version.
It was a motorized, kind of a toy model. They had a battery box about where the muffler is. Once it was all buttoned up, it was okay, but the body was made up of so many pieces that didn't fit. It was very wonky looking.
Yeah.
So there was no flow, no beauty. The car itself I find to be just a sexy, gorgeous machine.
Was the body itself fairly accurate?
Accuracy within tolerances, but nothing fit. You had gaps of a quarter to an eighth of an inch along the sides. Along here, the doors didn't fit. So magnets, this model has approximately 190 or more magnets in it that allow everything
190 magnets, you gotta love that.
So everything locks together very simply.
Yeah, and the seams, when this all closes up, everything joins together so sweet.
Right, so after all the fitting of the body, adding material, cutting, shaping, the doors actually fit kind of at an angle. I had to reorient the doors so that the windows aligned correctly. So the doors had to be made to fit so that windows look correct. The doors on this are done with magnets as well. As you can see, they pop. They're very loose fitting here. So when I lift it up, these are held on by magnets and they can just be lifted off. And there's hydraulic supports that allow the doors to open and close and stay open. So we got little gas struts, not hydraulic, gas struts.
And the struts are friction that holds them together.
Correct, yeah. Hypodermic stainless and brass. The dashboard is scratch built. It was originally a right-hand drive car. I converted it to left-hand drive, and rather than converting things, it was easier just to scratch build everything. Reused much of the tub, some of the seats themselves, parts were reused. The engine, I used a monogram Camaro Z28 engine block, cast a copy, completely reworked it, corrected it, again, copied what's in my car.
So a lot of scratch building?
There's more scratch building than there is kit at this point.
Oh, I can imagine.
I would say I kept the body parts and heavily reworked them. I kept the clear parts in the headlights. The wheels have been replaced. I made my own, I designed them in CAD and printed them in 3D, and then I machined the aluminum parts. So these are 7 spokes, again with the 7s. Instead of the 6 spokes that should be on a Lola. And the tires were also from the kit.
But you got the benefit of kit tires, so you didn't have to make those.
They're starting to crack, but I'm actually catting up new tires for it right now. So if they go bad, not that I'm hoping they won't, but if they go bad, I will have a new set to put on them.
The coloration of all this, what was the influence of that?
It's obviously inspired by the Sunoco cars. In fact, there's a little Sunoco decal on the front of the wing mirror.
Oh yeah.
Just a nod to let people know. So many people are going, "You making the Sunoco car?" No, I'm not. But I thought if I put a little Sunoco decal on there, people would realize, yeah, I'm aware that it looks a lot like the Sunoco.
It's got that flavor.
Yeah, so the yellow is Tamiya chrome yellow lacquer. All the finish is clear coated with urethane. The blue color is actually a color called Violent Blue that I had mixed around 2011 for another client's project. He let me keep the paint, and I figured after about 10 years, it's mine. So then I decided it's a loud enough paint that this car can carry it.
Now it has a slight pearl metallic.
It has a lot of pearl and it's got a purple hue to it.
Yeah.
So it changes from purple, I think that's kind of a play on words, violent blue.
If the car is red, blue, or black, just a solid color, it's going to reflect light and look great, like any Ferrari in red. But with this essence that's in there, is the highlights peak. It picks up light and it draws those lines a little more. It gives you a little more rise.
There's a little bit of a glow to it.
Yeah, on the curve, and the shadows get a little deeper. It just accentuates all those great shapes. And this is set up as a street car.
Yeah, it would
imagine.
be a diabolical machine. It would be deafening to be driving in. I didn't even waste the time putting a stereo in it. You'd want to hear this. You'd want to hear this until your ears bleed. Some of the funner things I thought about it was when I made the license plate. It's actually got a raised stamped license plate. It's got the correct tags on it. It is still legally registered.
And a black plate, California black plate.
They've reissued black plates for vanity plates now.
Cool.
And one of the more fun things I did was, since the back of the plate is visible, I went ahead and did all the detail work so that when you see the back of the plate, that's what a real back of the plate looks like. It's got the stamped effect on both sides of it.
That's such a great surprise to see that when it's open.
It's mostly made out of brass, but it's also made out of plotter cut pieces of vinyl that I hand placed on it and then made a custom decal for the outside.
Oh, perfect, because that vinyl would be just the right thickness.
It's two layers for the Lola T70 lettering, one layer for the California, because on the real plates they are a different depth.
Okay, really?
I walk my dog every morning and I study the smallest nuances on cars every day.
That's a great way to be.
Yeah, the battery is actually a replica of a new type of GM battery. If you took it out, all the details are there. You can't see a lot of the things. It's a Holley fuel pump and regulator. It's got the Purolator gas filter that I run on my car. I put one of the glass types, which I hate because they were prone to leaking, but they make a visual connection, and they were so popular that people still use them for whatever reason.
It lights well.
It does look good in it.
Gives it a little bit of a glow. It's the jewelry that's
and a lot of the parts that I choose aren't necessarily parts I would put on my own car, but they look good. I've used parts that I know are not good parts to put on real cars, but they look pretty. So it's a model. That's a latitude of styling that I can do.
So on this, really, you took a lot of freedom. This is your car.
It would be
It's
very
not a
similar.
replica. It's not like you're sitting.
This is kind of like my dream car. The breathers and such, those are the ones I would use on my car. The HDI distributor is what I run on my car. It is accurate down to every little feature, even the little locking. There's little L locks that hold the cap onto the distributor. As I built it, took photographs and shared it online so that there's tons of things you can't see, but thanks to digital age, you can see it before it's hidden away.
But you've also had the pleasure of building that.
Yeah, and I built.
Some things get hidden away, and you're
Well,
just happy you could do it.
There's a fire extinguisher under the passenger seat that took me an entire month to make, and it even has the gauge with the needle and it's standing on a pin. You can read it. All the gauges actually have their own needles and they're standing on pins. They don't move because, well, why would they? I'm not crazy, despite what the people say. Many of these parts, I would have the luxury of designing off of the actual real parts. My brother owns a shop. I go through his cores and I take home what I want, put it on my bench and take my measurements, so everything that's on there is correct. If I don't have it, I know where I can get the real thing to copy. So it helps to make it not only look accurate, to be accurate and make sure that everything does fit together. If you start fudging on things, just going by eyeball, you might end up at the end that you find out something doesn't fit, you may not know why. Well, the real one fits, why doesn't this? There's why.
Right. Did you ever do that? You make a part, you know it's dead accurate, you get it in there and question it and go, it looks too small or it looks too big.
Sometimes I have that problem and I'll double check it, and there are times where you have to fudge something because we have wall thicknesses that we have to contend with. That the real car, this body is thicker than the aluminum on the real car. So there are some concessions that have to be made, but I tend to try to make it as accurate as possible from the start. And then if it needs to be fudged to look right,
go for it.
yeah. But the little sawhorses here where I realized once I took the hood off, they take them off and they stand them up in a corner on the real cars, and I thought I don't want to chip the paint up on mine, so I copied the sawhorses I have in my backyard. And I embedded magnets in the wood part, and the same magnets that make the body panels lock onto the car correspond with the magnets here, so when I display it, if something gets bumped, they're not going to fall off.
It lines up. And the beauty of those magnets is you can always put a coat of paint over it and they disappear.
Actually, I drill them out. I drill out an 1/8 inch hole, sink them, fill them, and they're completely hidden inside. They've got a gap of probably 1/16 of an inch, so it is street driven, so there is a little bit of dirt and grime and dust.
What are your thoughts on the show? I mean, we had the banquet this morning. The room's been crazy. People are packing up.
This is awesome. I've been coming since 1999. I haven't missed one since 1999. And I don't always enter because it typically takes me a couple years to build a model. So I kind of alternate years that I enter. I typically just bring one model that I built and roll the dice, see what comes out. Happy with the way it came out.
Have you seen changes over the years you've been here?
Yeah, the competition has definitely gotten stiffer. If I brought what I brought the first time, or the first time I won Best of Show, I don't think it would have placed here. I don't know. It would have been tough.
Now, what has changed?
Everybody's paint's gotten better. It's across the board. The paint, we have better paint products available. People know how to use them now. Machining, people are becoming more adept at machining, or at least buying machine parts. You've got the 3D printing and the CAD world. Since I work in the CAD world, I work in the machining world, I work in the 3D printing world, I work in the paint world, I work in the decal world. So I'm lucky that I have all of these tools at my fingertips.
Right, tools, but also comfortable experience, knowledge.
Correct.
Of all of it.
And so this didn't take me just 4 years to build. I had years of knowledge, or years of training myself, so to speak, to figure it out. And even, for example, the white lettering on the tires, I didn't know how I was going to do that when I started the model. To me, it has a line of lacquer paints that came out, and they have a flat white that turns out to be the right thing to paint these with.
The lacquer.
Lacquer of all things.
On the
rubber, and it actually works. Now, 5 years ago, I'd say that to anybody, and they would laugh at me.
Right.
Well, I painted these months ago, and I've been rolling them around and playing with it. So there are products that have come out now that we didn't have access to, and even if you don't use them necessarily correctly, it is making the hobby work better. And I think people are just better builders now. There are a lot of better builders coming out.
Machining, I thought, has always had a huge impact on what we see on the tables.
Yes.
I mean, machining is super important. Do you think 3D printing will have?
I think it already is. It already is doing it. Yeah. There's things on here that I 3D printed. Carburetors are done in 3D. So I had the real Weber carburetor, drew it up, and printed it.
And printed 8 of them, or 4 of them, or whatever you need.
I typically print one master, and then I make an RTV mold, and then I cast them. So when I'm designing, I'm also keeping in the back of my mind that I've got to make a mold to be able to reproduce this and control the mold lines. But I personally don't have a lot of trust in a lot of the UV resins that we're printing with.
Right.
They're great when you make the part, but I've got parts that I made years ago that have gone a little wonky just sitting on the shelf.
That's what I've heard. I've heard maybe heat and sunlight, or the combination.
Well, you're using UV to cure it, so sunlight is certainly going to be a factor. The other problem that I experience is the type of resin I'm using is very brittle when it fully cures. So if I want to machine it, I've got to be very careful, which a lot of the parts that I make in 3D are machined before I make a mold. And I've blown a few parts,
Yeah. I mean, so is it almost as hard as like using like an acrylic?
Oh, acrylic's like butter compared to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this would be like trying to, if it would be artificial glass would be a good comparison.
Okay. Great.
And if it works, it's great, but when it doesn't, you better be prepared to make another one.
Surprises.
Less and less. As I move along, less surprises. So that makes me think I'm doing something right. I'm learning as I'm going.
GSL street machine class, best in class goes to a Lola T70 built by Mark D.
Last of our private awards is the Augie Best Machining Metalwork by Rondos, Mark Gustavson.
To say the least, that was the greatest array of high-tech skills and basic craftsmanship we've seen ever. But at the end, we had to make a decision of whose machining work would best exemplify the traditions and standards that Augie Hiscano established nearly a quarter of a century ago. And we're happy to say that this year's Augie, the Best Machining Metalwork Award, goes to Mark Jones for his Lola T70.